So I'm the youngest of 4 children. We're born very close in age. We are born within 5 years of each other. I was brought up by a single parent, my mother, and she taught us all to have very little respect for authority and conformity, and that actually rules were there to be broken. And so it's actually quite amazing that any of us have still remained employed or in sort of gainful employment throughout our lives. I grew up in the West Country, outside Bath, and I am quite badly dyslexic. So I was in remedial classes till I was 16, changed schools, and went from the bottom of the class to the top. And my school wanted me to go to Cambridge, but I decided, being a rule breaker, that I would go and do maritime law at Southampton, which I did, and I enjoyed very much. I went to work in the city, and then after about 6 years of being in maritime and aviation finance, I decided that I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted, and went back to see my tutor at university. And she said, you need to go and do the BCL because you won't be bored. And I applied, got in, to my surprise, and went to Teddy Hall to do the BCL, really out of curiosity and really to give the opportunity to take a step back and think about where law sat in my career and my life. So I went to Teddy Hall, matriculated in 1997 as a slightly older student because I'd been working for 6 years. And not only I'd been working for 6 years, but I'd been working incredibly hard. So the kind of work I did completely consumed my life for 6 years. And so suddenly I was at university. The BCL was hard work. I did it in the years when you could do 4 courses. You could pick some of the more demanding courses in conjunction with each other. And I did restitution and conflict. So it was pretty hard on in terms of the amount of work to do. But even then I still had more time than I'd ever had since I'd been 18, I think. And I took up real tennis. So I played real tennis. I'd been a squash player before and I played real tennis, and I ended up as captain of the real tennis team a couple of years later, briefly, because I then decided to move on to do other things. I sang in a jazz band with the guy who is now the head of brain imaging at Caltech. So we called ourselves the Prozac twins because we used to sing really depressing blues. And it was just fantastic. And it gave me this opportunity to re-explore things beyond professional life. I had great friendships. I had an amazing time. And it really sparked my belief in curiosity as being one of the core elements of how I wanted to pursue my life. And so I think one of the things that I really got from my time at Oxford was a shift from when opportunities came to me to say, well, why? To a much more open-minded approach, which was, well, why not? And that has been both a blessing and a curse. So after I graduated from the BCL, I went back to the law firm that I'd been working with because they'd sponsored me, they paid for me to do the BCL, which was very kind of them. And when I got back, I realised that actually I didn't want to stay in private practice and become a partner, which was the option at the time. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I took the easy option and I came back to Oxford to do a DPhil in emerging electronic commerce business models and conflicts of law. But as this was sort of back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, it was a very little understood area of law, and I was given the first scholarship to NYU Law to continue my research there because they were looking at this area. And I spent some time in New York at NYU doing my research there. As a result of that, I realised that actually it was probably time for me to go back to work, and I stopped my DPhil, which I kind of regret actually. I wish I'd kept going. I didn't think I was sort of clever enough to work it out on my own and didn't want to come back to Oxford to try and sort it out and then come up with something that was substandard. So I went to be a strategy consultant because that's what everyone else seemed to be doing. And then since leaving the DPhil programme, I've really sort of spent my time, I'm going to say, bouncing almost from discipline to discipline. So I've been a strategy consultant. I was a government regulator at Ofcom, where I led investigations and a multidisciplinary team. And we did amazing things. We did things like the investigation of the sale of the Premier League football rights and whether it was appropriate for them to go to a single buyer or whether they should be broken into multiple packages, which is what happens now. I know far too much about mobile telephony and how the systems connect into fibre networks. I've run government projects for the education department, and I've also gone back into law to structure securitisations and ended up leading a securitisation team for nearly 6 years in the city. When I was running securitisations, I actually was a freelance consultant. So although I worked at a partner level, I hadn't actually joined the law firm. And I was encouraged to join the law firm on a permanent basis, which made me reconsider whether I actually wanted to stay in the law, given that I seemed incapable of staying for any significant period of time. Took a step back and thought, well, what do I really want to do? And realised that what interested me was not necessarily the technical law, but actually how people worked. And as a result of that, I ended up going to a business school called INSEAD, which is outside Fontainebleau, and is a globally recognised, well-known business school. And I retrained as an organisational psychologist. I did a 2-year master's in psychology and then went on to the Tavistock in London, where I continued my training. And now I work as an organisational psychologist with professional service firms, financial service firms, banks, working predominantly in the area of culture change and the progression of women at senior levels to really enable them to optimise opportunities they have and accelerate their careers. So I think OWL is a really important element of the alumni network, not the alumna network, but the alumni network, because I don't think it is just about women. And to me, OWL is a real opportunity for there to be a sharing of collective wisdom, but also an opportunity for collective learning as well. And one of the things I certainly see in the work I do now with women is that there can be a sort of an almost a loneliness to how do I progress my career. There can be a lack of role models, there can be a sense that the experience that women have as they progress through their careers is unique to them, is individual. And actually most of the issues that women are presented with or that they feel may be constraining their careers are actually quite universal. And by having an OWL community, that gives an opportunity for learning across the generations and across different aspects of the legal arena, so that individuals don't have to be alone as they progress their careers. And to me, it's just a really, really important part of how we can support people who are coming into the profession, but also how we can support people who might want to move through the profession and leave the profession as well to go on to other things. So the issues that still need to be addressed in law after women have been in practice for 100 years, I think are primarily cultural actually. And we've seen many, many initiatives over the last 30 years. So I've been in the profession since 1991. And we've had near parity of women entering the profession since I joined. And yet there has been hugely well documented lack of progression to more senior levels. And many, many initiatives have been put in place to try and fix this. So we've had pipeline initiatives, we've had role model initiatives, and yet the problem is sort of slowly improving, but not improving at the rate you would expect given both the financial and the emotional investment that we've seen across the industry in this issue. And one thing that I think we failed to talk about, and until we deal with it, we're going to have a persistence in gender pay gap, in representation at senior levels, is the pervasive nature of the culture of the industry and the fact that it celebrates very limited forms of success and rewards very limited forms of behaviour. So in terms of celebrating success, success tends to take the form either of equity partnership or becoming a QC or perhaps becoming a GC at a senior level in an organisation. If you don't aspire to any of those levels or roles, success is not only less rewarded, it's also less respected. There's been some very interesting research done at Harvard by someone called Claudia Goulden, who's an economist. And she's looked at professional service firms and how success is rewarded and how commitment's rewarded. And what she's found is that unlike other normal professions, when you look at something like elite law, you get something called a non-linear reward. So if I work 10% less, I will find that my reward is 40 to 50% less. Whereas if I'm a pharmacist and I work 10% less, my reward is 10% less. And it's this non-linear impact of taking career breaks, of working fewer hours, of not necessarily choosing or wanting to become an equity partner because you're looking for a slightly different lifestyle, locks in behaviours and rewards that the industry at the moment over proportionately celebrates to the detriment of those who wish to go another way. So in terms of the 100 years women, in terms of how the culture needs to change, until we recognise that success comes in different flavours and we reward it in a more evenly distributed way, I suspect that we will see the gender pay gap continue to persist. I suspect that we will continue to see underrepresented groups, not just women, leave. I suspect that we will continue to see certain contributions to business under-rewarded even though they're highly valued. So the advice I give to a current law student about their future, I think I probably have two pieces of advice. The first is you will have times in your career where you will feel that you are having particular difficulties or that you are struggling in terms of your career progression. And you will think that that is something to do with you. And in fact, the vast majority of issues that individuals face or come up against are pretty universal. So you will feel I'm not good enough, or you will feel this is too hard, or you'll feel opportunities aren't arising. You will feel that actually there isn't a clear career progression for you. And these will make you feel anxious. But the truth is, pretty much everyone around you is feeling those. And as you go from trainee to associate, associate to partner, you go through a transition where you have to learn new things. That will make you uncomfortable. That discomfort is a natural and in fact healthy part of your career progression. But it's nothing about you, it's simply how your career progresses. The second piece of advice I have, I think, and looking at my own career as well, is that this is highly unlikely to be your only career. We're entering a time where career fluidity and career migration is going to be increasingly frequent. So you will spend some time at a law firm, you may become a partner, but you will also go on to do other things as well. And so as you go through your career, look beyond just being a lawyer and think about what really interests me, what other skills can I pick up, what other networks can I build, because I'm going to go on to do other things.